Up to you last film today because next week we're gonna have a special class in the Hashem on keeping kosher in a kosher environment or a home that's not same standards that we have, how to navigate some of these challenges. Hashem himself will try and shed some light on that, and that could be a good thing. Let's hope. So we're up to page Kuf Ches. Halacha Memhei. The halacha number 45, page 108, page Kuf Ches. If you have a vessel, or when you have a vessel that needs kashering and also needs tevilah, so the order itself in which how that's accomplished and done itself is tighter. So a vessel that needs to be kasher and also needs tevilah. A vessel needs to be kasher, it needs hagol and also needs to be tevilah. First, we have to make it kasher. Then you can table it. What happens if somebody reversed the order and they tabled it before they kashered it? There are those that say that you have to retable it. And some say you do not have to retable it. There are different opinions. So what do we do in a different opinion? When in doubt, leave it out. You table it again without a bracha, because there's a doubt as to whether or not you do need to table it again. The bracha, the next halacha gets into the bracha. We make a bracha before the tefillah. If you're tabling one keli, you say al tefillas keli. If you're tabling more than one keli, you say al tefillas kelim. If you again reverse the order there, you said keli for two vessels. You say kelim for one vessel, you're still yaitza. Let's look at inside halacha memvav. So let's tefillas akli before tabling the vessel, even if it's a chuchis, that's only midrabanan, that's rabbinic. Tzarich levarich, have to make a bracha. Baruch Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kashem mitzvah v'tzivah not tefillas keli. Im table shnei kelim or yosef, you're tabling more than one keli, which means 2, 3, or 4, whatever the number is. You finish off al tefillas kelim plural. Im hechel das nusach habracha said somebody reversed the order and they exchange it. Keleima beirach al harbe kelim, they made a bracha on many vessels al tefillas keli. Or al kli echad, or on one vessel al tefillas kelim yotza, they're still yaitza. What happens? Another example would be another scenario: somebody tabled and forgot to make the bracha. Then then they do not make a bracha afterwards. Halacha mem zayin. There's a klal in halacha. Whenever you have a suffix, right? When in doubt, leave it out. If there's a suffix whether or not this vessel requires tevilah, then you table it without a bracha. If someone's tabling a vessel out of doubt, you don't make a bracha. Because the suffix of bracha is lahakal. Now that's the halacha, straight up. But if a person has the prerogative and the ability and the choice to wait until they're going to be tabling something that requires a bracha, it is preferable for them to have the vessel that's a suffix right along for the wave, right along on the ride, so that you're making the bracha on the kli that needs a bracha. So you also table the one that's a suffix. So that way, the one that's a suffix is getting a bracha, but it's not bracha levatala because the bracha was applicable to the one that had a chiyuv. It's better to wait, if possible, to wait till you have a vessel that certainly needs the tevilah, and you table both of them. You make a bracha on the vadai, and you also have in mind to also fulfill the obligation of the suffix. And make the bracha al tefillas kelim. If you have to table it right away, you make the bracha on the tefillah without Hashem's name. You should think about Hashem's name in your heart and don't actually utter it in your lips, with your lips. So if you're telling someone about a bracha, you can think about Hashem's name, but don't actually utter it. What's an example of telling someone without from a suffix? We spoke about this a few weeks ago. I'm just going to bring it up again. It's a bit of a fascinating discussion. I don't want to speak about it. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I want to touch on it. So a disposable aluminum pan, which is meant as a one-time use, you don't make a bracha. You don't table it at all because it's a throwaway vessel. The person intends on reusing it. Some Rabbanim hold if your intention from the get-go that when I'm reusing it, let's say you have those muffin pans, I'm going to use it over and over again. I bake muffins. So then they would say that you do have a chiyuv to table it. But even then, there's an opinion. Rabbi Moshe writes that when a Jew decides to keep it as a vessel, at least conceptually, they're now making it into a vessel because it's designed to be a throwaway vessel. When a Jew now acquires it, decides they want to keep it and use it for perpetuity, it's like they made the vessel because they're designating it now for perpetuity. So then that would be an example where the Jew made it, and then it wouldn't need tevilah. So in such a case, you would table without a bracha, but it's proper to table it. But you're asking if you bend it, and then it's not really going to be enough because what in order for it to qualify that a Jew made the vessel, you have to do what's known as a Maisa Uman. You have to do the type of activity that would require a craftsman. So, for example, if somebody took apart an electronic device that you needed to have a degree in electronics engineering to do, and then they put it back together, that's considered like the Jew made it. But just taking out one screw, which all of us can do, is not considered to be a Maisa Uman. Tefillah b'lei kavana memches. Tefillah's kelim ain't tzricha kavana. It doesn't need kavana. It doesn't even need a human intervention. We can get a robot. Or if a vessel fell into the mikveh by itself, it does not require another tefillah as long as it had a proper immersion. It was all immersed. Aval hifsid as tefillah, but a person lost the opportunity to make the bracha. Came the baruch because we don't make a bracha after the mitzvah was already done. Right? What about a child? Fascinating discussion. So tefillah's kelim is midrabanan or midraisa. We had in the beginning of our studies. There are opinions that say it's the raisa because you have psukim, right? You have psukim based on that. So since it's the raisa, then a child is not nemer on the raisa, only on the rabbanans. So ein minim klotim k'tan tefillah's kelim. We don't entrust a child under bar bat mitzvah for tefillah's kelim. In other words, they cannot do it on their own. It's straight up in the mechaber. Beis Yosef writes. Now you can have an adult watching them. That's okay, but they cannot do it on their own. You cannot send a child to here go table these vessels for me. Because the child is not considered in trust on something that's not Torah. In godel image so there's an adult watching over there. Watching how the child does the tefillah, the child may do the actual act because you have an adult who's verifying and solidifying and testifying that it's done right. That's fine. And the child would make the bracha, which would be a wonderful chinuch opportunity. If you have a child, take them with you. Say, okay, you're going to have the ability to make the bracha, to do the mitzvah. I'm going to watch, and when you become a gadol, when you become bar bas mitzvah, you can do it entirely by yourself. Beautiful chinuch opportunity. The way to get a child to learn halachos is to involve them. Many years ago, one of my children asked me a question, and I didn't know the answer. So I said, I have to ask the Rav. And I think I may even involve them in asking the Rav. But down to the Rav to ask the question. Because it's also a chinuch opportunity to show them that if you don't know the answer, seek the answer, you speak to a Rav, you get the guidance. So to involve the child is a chinuch opportunity. What about tefillah? What about tefillah? We're now on the bottom of page Kuftes. The immersion of the vessel through a non-Jew. Just like a child is not entrusted on the tefillah, so to a non-Jew is not considered entrusted to do the tefillah because it's a mitzvah, it's something that they're not obligated to do. If you have a store, that has a mikvah for tefillah's kelim, that this particular mikvah obviously have to have hechsher from a rav to make sure that the mikvah is kosher, right? If there is no hechsher, then don't say v'li vessel. They're in like an imit v'li kelim. Then ein laniach l'payala hanochim shitpus hakelim. Should not allow the workers or non-Jewish to do the actual tefillah. Elim ken Yehudi oimid v'rei echtev hanach. Unless a Jew is standing there. The Jew is standing there watching how it's done. The non-Jew can do the actual activity, but the bracha would still have to be done by the Jew. This also is not considered proper because even Shiyaf says mitzvah, because then the Jew would not be able to make the bracha. Because he can't make the bracha on what the non-Jew is doing. But what you could do is you can start the tefillah, make the bracha, and then the non-Jew can finish and you watch. That's acceptable. You can do the first keli, make the bracha, and then the non-Jew can finish off the tefillah as long as you're watching and making sure it's being done properly. Yes.
Or something like right now.
Interesting question. I don't know the answer for sure, but I would think that you don't have to, because when it comes to food, you're eating the food, so it's going to go into your hand. But when it comes to toiveling, the Indian is not to eat the vessel. The Indian is that has to get immersed in the mikvah. So it doesn't really matter if it's done with the right hand or the left hand, whichever one's going to be easier. Now, the right hand is considered to be a little bit more, posh. Let's see here. I don't know if you have to even be holding it then, because when it comes to, let's say, for example, Netilas Lulav, you have to hold the lulav. The mitzvah is to hold the lulav. Here, the mitzvah is not to hold the vessel. The mitzvah is that the vessel has to get immersed. So, if you're gonna, you're standing there and you're gonna like watch it go down right into the mikvah through a chute, it's also good. No mitzvah in holding it. It just happens to be that practically the most efficient way to do it is to actually immerse it yourself. But if you're, so then I don't think that's necessary. Halacha nun aleph. What about, now we're getting into what's known as mysticism. You have mysticism with an S and mysticism, TH, is the myth. Hashimish b'kli b'terem, what's called? Can I use a vessel before it was toivel? We already said earlier. A vessel that was impossible to toivel, for a certain reason, one's not allowed to use it. Even if somebody used the vessel 100 times without toiveling, it still requires tefillah. One's not allowed to use it because there is a chiyuv to toivel a vessel. It's a non-throwaway vessel. It's being reused, made from material that's completed field. There's a chiyuv to do that. Yes.
How do you know? Let's say you have an entire kitchen full of food that's only been used for kosher ingredients, but the food isn't, there's anything toilet. You then have to kosher it?
No, the food is kosher to eat, but before we use the vessel, once again, we have to serve the vessels. Halachim and Beis, pretty much through the end of our studies, the next 5 halachot, that is, discuss how to handle electronic vessels or electric vessels. So there's really 2 parts to this discussion. I want to give you a little bit of a summary outside, then we'll take a dive inside, so to speak, a deep dive inside. So you have certain vessels that have an electronic motherboard. For example, you have these fancy coffee machines, I don't know, these cake-up machines, whatever they are. Those, if you immerse a vessel that has an electronic motherboard in the mikvah, it's finished. It's not going to survive the trip. You can say as many, let's say, till him 5 times over, you can go to the spray, it's not going to work. Because an electronic motherboard, it's got all those sensitive components that get waterlogged, finished. So that's really, there's no eitzah there. Some rabbanim are mekel anyways, because it's plugged into the ground, it's considered to be attached to the ground. So we're going to learn, when you have no choice, if there's no option for toiveling it, you can gift it or sell it to a non-Jew and borrow it back. We'll discuss that at length in a few minutes. But there's another kind of vessel, which is known as like a hot water urn. Those don't have as many components as an electronic motherboard has a plug-in feature, right? Has a receptacle on the actual vessel itself, and then it has a plug that goes into the wall. So if the plug is removable, you take the plug out. The plug does not need to reload. But if the plug is attached, it needs to get in together. And then you immerse the whole thing. Now, there's a sticker on all these vessels that say, warning, do not immerse in water. Doing so, a person can risk shock and all kinds of tropical diseases and terrible things. But Jewish people defy gravity. We're higher than nature. So the Jewish people do it anyways. And they immerse it in the mikveh 3 times. And then they turn it upside down, they let it dry out for 3 days, and it works perfectly fine. That's been my experience. At least I'm not giving any guarantees. Or you could buy one that has a hechsher that was never owned by a non-Jew and it doesn't need tevilah. Now that's one thing. A third thing I want to point out when it comes to hot water urns, which is something that's a little bit of a lesser known fact. Some water urns have an eyeglass on the outside, a water glass, to tell you, give you a reading on the level of water inside the machine itself. So they're very nice, beautiful, very useful, but it does create an issue with Shabbat because if you have hot water inside the tank itself, the machine, now I have water on the eyeglass on the outside. If the eyeglass water is not attached directly to the hot water, and meaning that the eyeglass water doesn't stay warm, if it actually gets cold, by me taking out hot water from the main tank, it's going to cause that some water from the eyeglass is now going to go down and go back into the tank. And by doing that, it's going to actually boil. So I'm causing cold water to boil on Shabbos, which would be a problem with Bishul. So therefore, if you're going to get such a type of machine, get one with a hechsher, because those are designed to be Shabbos friendly. That's an issue. But otherwise, if you don't get one with an eyeglass, you're just getting a regular one, put table with and immerse it. They till them 20 times, it'll be fine. Even if you don't take till them 20 times, it's probably going to be fine. And just turn it upside down and let it dry. Halacha and base. It's like they have those signs on the vending machine, warning, do not rock machine, doing so can risk all kinds of things. They don't want your vending machine, but okay. An electric vessel needs tevilah. By the way, another thing I want to point out, if you're going to buy a George Foreman or one of those sandwich makers, they make ones that are really friendly for the Jewish people. They make ones with removable plates. That's what I'd recommend you buy because the plates are not electric. They're just metal or enamel, whatever they call it. You just immerse the plates. But if the plates are not removable, it's a problem. You put the whole machine in and then they can get waterlogged, etc. Not so simple. Even though you're worried, oh no, the vessel's going to get ruined. If I put it into the water, the cholzes in hetel das reva post. Most poskim say there's no hetel ishtamish regli to use it without table. If I don't put the food directly on the vessel, then it doesn't need tefillah. So, for example, if I don't actually put the food directly on this vessel, it does not need tefillah. Therefore, Tanur Chashmali cut in a small toaster oven. So we have those toaster ovens that has a door that opens. You have a shelf, 1 or 2 shelves. So there only the shelf needs tevilah because I don't put the food directly on the walls of the oven. Yes? Clear, understood, yes? The rest of the oven, the toaster oven that does not touch the food, does not need tevilah. That's very easy. So too, let's say a hot plate for Shabbos doesn't need tevilah because we don't put the food directly on the hot plate. Let's say, for example, I have a slow cooker, like a crock pot. So it's the inner vessel. You only have to have the inner vessel, the outer vessel, in other words, touching the food. The inner vessel is just heating the food, doesn't touch the food, does not need to do that. So depending on what the inner vessel, depending on what the outer vessel is made out of, if it's made out of material that requires tevilah, then it would need tevilah. But the inner vessel, that's just the heating component that does not touch the food, would not need tevilah. Halachan and Gimel. If the food touches the vessel, you have to table the whole vessel. If someone's concerned about ruining the vessel, idea for putting it into water, one can plug up the holes. Let's say, for example, I have a hot water urn. This is my example. My hot water urn, and then there's a receptacle here for the plug. I take out the plug, so you can take a wet rag that's wet from the mikvah water and stick it in there. If you're worried about it getting ruined. You can put your hand in the mikvah water and then cover the hole with your hand that's wet with the mikvah water. Don't stick your hand too tight, put it in loosely. That's one option. And you can also take a rag that was immersed in the mikvah water and stick it into the hole, not so tight. I'll take the question in a moment. Some say you can put a plug on the actual receptacle on the outside, so the water shouldn't go there. Please, a vessel that you cannot table any other way. Try to avoid buying the halim sifin and vav. See, in a few sifin, we're going to speak about another situation. Yes.
The example you just gave was like putting the rag and things in the mikvah water and pushing it, like that's like after you like table as much of the item as you can, and then you like keep that one part not in the mikvah.
Well, yeah, either way, but you're going to make it wet, so you can put that part in first or second, as long as it's all in at once. But the idea is that you're going to minimize the amount of water it's going to get. It's going to get water, but not as much.
Wait, sorry. So you just kind of like that, and then you do this back, then you widen the rag.
Oh, you do it all together. Like you would, let's say, I put the wet rag inside and then tie the whole thing very fast. So the wet rag is somewhat shielding water, but the water's still there.
Okay.
Halacha mandala al kimecha mayim chashmali, hot water urn, machvas chashmali, hot water plate, plate chashmali, an electric vessel like makes waffles like a waffle maker. Please show you a popcorn machine. Kulam tzrichim tzvila b'bracha. All of them need a bracha. Need tzvila with a bracha. B'derech klal ein hakelim ein kelim ein mizakim tzvila b'mayim. Generally speaking, these vessels don't get ruined when they're immersed in water one time. If you wait a few days, usually 3 days, till they dry out thoroughly. As I said before, the Jewish people defy gravity reality, and it works, usually. Yes.
Do we have to put the towel in the pot so we can go in and dry this thing?
No, going out, you don't have to do it. Well, the only idea of putting down liquid that you want to use the water to stuff up the hole. But that's the only reason to do that.
Right.
Now, there's another kind of toaster which is known as a vertical toaster. It has a casing. The bread goes in vertically, and you press down a button. Those are only for bread. You cannot put anything else in there. The regular toasters that have the shelf, you can make pizza in there. You can make all kinds of foods. Essentially, it's a small oven. But this is it's just strictly for bread. Has a casing. So, Yesh Misha Mater l'shtamsh b'toaster. But Moshe was mater. He was a toaster mitzanin. Cliches b'tzinim lechem please feel without table keep v'leinach shazel please suda. But behold, it's not clay suda. Why? You can eat the bread the way it is. There are those that differ and say that it needs tefillah. And actually the minhag is to be machma on this matter. The reason that Moshe was makel about it is because he held that such a machine is not really making the food ready to eat. It's not clay suda. It's doing something different. It's taking bread that's already edible, and it's giving it grill marks, essentially. It's darkening it. Or it's just toasting it. Okay, now halachim involved. If one needs to use a certain vessel, the yesh one cannot table it under any circumstances. One cannot table it under any circumstances. One could give the vessel to a non-Jew, as a complete gift. The Yoshav Yish Alena B'Chazorah, then borrow it back from the non-Jew. The then a woman would be allowed to use it. Yedin Klishal Nachri. like the vessel of a non-Jew, because the vessel for a non-Jew does not have the obligation to table. Just one second, I'll take the question. Whether or not the situation you're in would qualify, because such a thing we only allow b'shas hadchak, but one has no other choice, because we don't want to be mafsid a bracha b'yadayim. We don't want to forgo an opportunity to make a bracha. So one of the other options possibly could be to do what's known as a ma'aser uman, where someone would take apart the vessel or rebuild the vessel. Let's say it's a big tank that's the size of half this room. So if a hole will be drilled in the center of the tank, it makes it unusable. Then if a Jew would own the vessel at that point, and when it gets rewelded, it would be considered like the vessel was made by the Jew. That would also avoid the issue. So there's a few different ways to deal with this issue. Additionally, when it comes to vessels that are used only for business purposes, there's an opinion that says those do not require tzvila because it's not considered clay se'ud. It's not vessels that you serve with. It's vessels that are known as clay mitzvah, which is a different category. Okay, questions? If they're buying it from you, they should give it to you. To give you a little bit of money. If you're giving it them as a present, they should lift it up to give it as a complete present.
There's money exchange.
I think so. No, the money would be there. Yeah. Okay, that pretty much covers that subject. And if there's any other questions on the subject, we can address them now. If not, we can go on.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I just me yesterday, it's so much feeling, like, I had a bunch of like glass, like, cupboards, and like, they have rubber tops, so I bought them all together, I thought them, but like, in the future, I don't need to play with the rubber tops.
Rubber's not what we feel, no.
Just like, I wasn't even thinking about it, I was just like,
So you made the bracha on the glass, it's okay.
yeah. Well, you're allowed to make bracha on glass, like, what are you gonna have another?
It's the Rabbana, but we do make a bracha. It's actually, no, I'm sorry, just 1 second. We do make a bracha though. It's, we had it over here in the beginning. Let's look at this 1 second. We just have this. Let me just double check. We said here. See what we wrote at the beginning. So the bracha then. You definitely table bracha. The question, yeah, you do make a bracha. Yeah, halacha yud. Mevarchim al tvilasam. So those that say it's also in our prayer. Okay. We tell a story now.
Mhm.
Shabbos. Stories. To pull up the files, open up the filing cabinet. Okay. We'll tell a story about a pastor of the Frierdiker Rebbe. I'll just give you a little bit of the historical background on the story. The Frierdiker Rebbe visited Chicago, I believe, 2 times. There was a kuntres that's known as Bikur Chicago. When the Rebbe came to Chicago, the Rebbe said, "Memoriam." And a lot of Chicago was like located somewhat in the center of the United States, and there was a lot of commerce that happened, a lot of business. So therefore, there were quite a few, Baruch Hashem, some Jews that were well-to-do. They were supporters of the Torah institution. And some of them never saw Rebbe before, and they weren't the Lubavitcher Hasidim. But when the Rebbe came, they immediately gravitated towards the Rebbe, and they wanted to become the Rebbe's Hasidim. So some of them said to the Rebbe that they want to be the Rebbe's banker. And they didn't all necessarily dress like Hasidim, but they were totally given over to the Rebbe. At least one of them gave the Rebbe an open checkbook, and they did a lot for Yiddishkeit. So there was someone named Robinson, there was another person named Kramer, there was Palmer. All these names are written in the Sikha of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So, from what I remember, there was a Yid named Palmer who was a Gvir, wealthy man, and he had an opportunity to get into a very, very big business deal in the 40s. And he asked the Frierdiker Rebbe if he should do it. The Frierdiker Rebbe said, don't do it. But he was so tempted by the opportunity to make so much money, he did not listen to the Rebbe. He just, I guess his desire to make so much money got the better of him. He went into the business deal, and he not only did he not make money, he ended up owing lots of money. He was in big tzarus, big problems. So he decided that he's going to take a trip to New York to get yechidus by the Frierdiker Rebbe, to ask the Rebbe how to get out of the mess that he went into by not listening to the Rebbe in the first place. You got to imagine this, set the stage here. So he's in yechidus by the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he knows the Rebbe knows why he's here, and he says, so he starts off. He says to the Rebbe, "Megich tetzel na ma'aseh." Can I say a story? I cover over a story. And so yeah, so he tells a story about there was this town. There was a Yid. We're going to call him Shmerel, the fictitious name, and he didn't have parnasa. So what he used to do is he used to go around in the town in a friendly way. He would steal from everybody. He wouldn't hurt anybody. Just take this. He would go to this house, take this, just so he can provide for his family. And then one night, he kind of ran out of houses that he was visiting to take things from. He sees there's one house he hasn't yet visited. So in the middle of the night, he climbs down the chimney, comes in, about to take things, and to his horror, he discovers that it's his own rabbi's house, and the rabbi is sitting in the middle of the house, learning Torah. The room is lighted on. The rabbi is startled to see him. He says, "Shmerel, can I helping? Can I help you, Shmerel?" So Shmerel says to the rabbi, "How do I get out of here? How do I get out of here?" So this Yid Palmer says to the Frierdiker Rebbe, "How do I get out of this mess that I created?" I don't know what the Rebbe told him, but that was nice. There's another nice with the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe gave Chicago. He gave the Rebbe a Rishima list of Gvirim. The Rebbe was collecting money for the yeshivas back in Europe. There was one Yid there who was a very, very wealthy. He was in the fur business, in the clothing business, but he was not about stuff. He was known as a miser. So they didn't put his name on the list. So the Rebbe looks at the Rishima and says, "How come the name of so-and-so he's not on the list?" Said to the Rebbe, "He's a miser. He's not going to give the Rebbe a penny. We don't want to waste the Rebbe's time." The Rebbe said, "I want his name on the list, and I want his name to be first on the list." So, of course, he beautifully listened to what the Rebbe said, and the Rebbe got a list with Mr. Cohen on the front, on top. And the Rebbe comes to Chicago, and the Rebbe's coming from Europe. The Rebbe comes into the office of Mr. Cohen, and the secretary greets the Rebbe, and Rabbi says, "I'd like to speak to Mr. Cohen." Mr. Cohen sent a message with the secretary to the Frierdiker Rebbe, "Tell the Rabbi I'm not going to give the Rabbi a red cent." So the Rebbe says to the secretary, "I didn't come to ask Mr. Cohen for money. I have a question to ask him, other than money related." Mr. Cohen comes out, speaks to the Rabbi, and the Frierdiker Rebbe shows Mr. Cohen that the back of his coat needs a button. He says to Mr. Cohen, he says, I know that you're in the clothing business and I'm missing a button, maybe you can help me." Mr. Cohen says to the Frierdiker Rebbe, "Rabbi, do you think I'm a fool to believe that the Rabbi will travel all the way from Europe to come to Chicago to my office to ask me for a button?" And the Frierdiker Rebbe responded and said, "You think I'm a fool to believe that the reason why God took your holy soul from the celestial heights and brought it down to this physical world and blessed you with all kinds of wealth is so that you should not use it to build mikvois, yeshivas, chadorim for Yiddishkeit?" And the Rebbe broke and started to get stuff after. There's another story I know, but it's very creepy, so I need permission from the audience before I say it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so, what's the, why is it creepy?
Not scary, it's a little creepy, that's all, not scary, it's a little creepy. You'll see, has to do with worms. There's there are times in the Frierdiker Rebbe writes about the story, doesn't mention the person's name. The times of the Rebbe Rashab, there was a Yid, who was a Bachman in Yeshiva, who was very, very intelligent. He was a very gifted person, very intelligent person, very good student, but you call a Talmud Memullah, a salty student, meaning very sharp. But when he was already like around 18 or 19, he left the path of Yiddishkeit. He moved to Berlin, and he started to go into circles of academia, and he eventually went to business, made a fortune of money. But he was not religious, and not only was some people are not religious, okay, they decide to live a different lifestyle. It's a choice. Can't force somebody to be religious. But this person not only was not religious, but he was on a mitzvah, and he would ridicule the mitzvah of tefillin. He would tell people that about tefillin. He would actually be antagonistic towards the mitzvah of one Muslim. Person lived a normal life for about age 80 or something when he passed away. He was a very famous person. The Rebbe says, without covered on mess, he's not going to mention his name. He doesn't mention the name in the Sikha. That's the Rebbe's writing. He says, in the son of this person, the person who passed away, after 2 years after his father passed away, he decided that he's going to move the grave of his father and build a whole mausoleum, like a whole, the shrine, a fancy resting place. We had to dig up the cave, and there were a lot of people that came to the second Leviat to make a second Leviat. He had a Leviat. Yeah, you have to do Likud Atzomis, and the person has to sit Shiva for a day also. So it's called Likud Atzomis. They had to, so when they dug up the grave, there were a lot of people there, and they saw a very wondrous thing. That on the mess, the place of the Shalrosh, the Tefillin, there was a big hole, and the place of the Shalyad and the arm was a big hole, and there were worms crawling in and out. And everybody that was there right away understood the association, because he spent his life talking against the mitzvah of tefillin. And because of this experience, many people started to put on tefillin afterwards. That's the story that Frierdiker writes. Now, I thought about this story, and Frierdiker tells over the story, so obviously there's a lesson. I realized, I think there's another deeper point here that the Rebbe is alluding to, as follows. This person that passed away, that was his path in life. Unfortunately, that's what he did. But Hashem gave such a bracha that implanted the idea in his son that they should move the grave of his father, so that many people should see what happened to their father, and to see and to use that as a catalyst to have them have the desire to now put on tefillin and to keep the mitzvah. So it comes out that the deceased person became a catalyst for people to put on tefillin after his lifetime, and that was a tikkun for his neshama. Okay, good Shabbos. I have time for one more story now. 2 more minutes. Well, I have a funny story also. I can go on for hours. Maybe I should just close my mouth today. No. I'll tell you one more story. There's a Maisa with the Tzemach Tzedek. There was a Tzemach Tzedek did not have yechidus with women. Somebody had diabetes. So there was a chassid whose wife suffered from migraines. So she asked her husband to go to Tzemach Tzedek for a bracha. So Tzemach Tzedek said, tell your wife to immerse her head in warm water when she gets a migraine. She did, and the migraine went away. Then after the stockers of Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Maharash became the Rebbe. And again, she had the migraine, so she asked her husband to go to the Rebbe Maharash. And the husband told the Rebbe Maharash what the Tzemach Tzedek said to do, but it wasn't helping now. The Rebbe Maharash said, okay, in that case, tell her to immerse her head in cold water. And she did, and the migraines went away. And then after the Rebbe Maharash lived a short lifetime, at times of the Rebbe Rashab, she still had migraines, and those various methodologies did not help. So the husband went to the Rebbe Rashab and said that the Tzemach Tzedek told my wife to immerse her head into hot water, and that only helped in the lifetime of the Tzemach Tzedek. And then the Maharash said, Teaching immersive in cold water, that only helped during the lifetime of the Rebbe Marash. What should she do now? The Rebbe Rashab said, in that case, tell her to mix the hot water in the cold water. And she did, and then headache went away. All right. Have a good Shabbos. It's Hashem, next week we'll have a special program. Then we're going to get into the halachas of kashering. That's going to be
What time? Is it gonna be Thursday?
Thursday, yeah, I think so. Could be. That's Hashem. I got your voicemail, yes, I got your voicemail. I'm thinking of, if I have an answer for you, so let me say this. Most probably, we could make a time to go right after school is over, I can go with my children, I could take a few of the girls also. That's probably gonna be the most practical. On Sunday, I don't think the factory would have a visit so easily. I could ask, but it's not so likely. So
Yeah, most girls. You would want to do it after school or anything? Or would like?
if I did after school was over, I would take some of my kids. And then some of you can come in my car, get another car, and we could go. There's another idea, by the way, I thought of. I have a factory that's even more fascinating. I have two factories in mind. One of them was a bagel company, but I have another factory that's called a flavor house. That's extremely complex. It's like it's the whole world, and I think that would be an even more fascinating type of visit because you'll be able to see probably about 15 different processes. And there's a lot of sophisticated machinery there. It's a very high class facility.
Before graduation.
It's not upstate. It's in New Jersey. It's an hour from here in Carteret. So the other option is to go on a Friday.
Yes.
That's a bit of a challenge. It's still possible because Shabbos is late. So what we can do is let me just look at the calendar. I teach on Fridays, but I stopped teaching at Benos Menachem on Fridays. I'll tell you when that is. I teach only the week after Lag BaOmer. That's my last week teaching there. So that means that the Friday of, let's see, so yeah, today is the 9th, right? So I'm teaching the 23rd. So what I would say is that the 30th of May, if it works for you, people schedule-wise, I could do it on a Friday, and I would reach out to the company. We would leave, let's say, Brooklyn around you have school till 1 on Friday. I don't know, till 12. Okay, so we can leave at 12 because we'll get there at 1 o'clock and have a visit till let's say 2:30 and still get home in time for Shabbos without a problem. You know, get home by 5, let's say 4:30, it's fine. So that makes the most sense.
Okay.
So just remind me, and I'll reach out to the company. You know, remind me like a week before. I'll reach out if it's possible. Well, then you won't be able to join. I don't know. We have to try and equal opportunity touring.
They don't.
Sorry?
One other girl.
Okay, so that wouldn't work. It's also a little bit hectic for me to do it later anyway. It's easy for me to do it earlier because kids finish school then and stuff is going on. So, but that's a fascinating factory. They also just redid it, and the culture in that company is absolutely stunning. It's incredible. They made up a bunch of rooms, meditation room. They have a room for nursing mothers. They have a room for private offices. It's like very, very, very caring, very caring about people's well-being. You know, so they have room for people just to have some time for themselves. The owner of the factory is a very, very special person. Anyway, I'll reach out to them. I actually have to speak to him anyways on a different matter. So try to answer that question. I'm not guaranteeing he's going to say yes, but I'm going to make the effort to ask him for the tour. And Mitzvah Hashem. Okay, have a wonderful Shabbos. Maybe even do it. Yeah, I'm going to try to reach him now and then someone knows it.
There were 4. They were like,
Really, actually, everything's so good. It just